It was so heartwarming the first few weeks of a lot of our guests coming in and re-establishing these kind of new relationships with some regulars that we've had for years. But now we've got this, I guess, deeper relationship with them because they genuinely asked, how are you going? Like, I'd get choked up every person that came in that I recognised, and they're like, you're doing a great job. Keep it up, and yeah, it's been incredible.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. In some ways, Australia's isolation from the rest of the world has helped shield us from the spread of the COVID-19 virus. But Tasmania, an Australian state and an island itself, has been isolated from the rest of Australia since shutting its borders. With a small population and two hubs, Hobart and Launceston, what has the impact been on the hospitality sector that traditionally leans on a tourist trade? Bianca Welsh is one of Australia's smartest young professionals and is leading the teams at Stillwater and Black Cow Bistro in Launceston. Hi Bianca, how are you?
Hi Huck, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. I think we're going to cover a broad range of issues here because we haven't spoken to someone from Tasmania yet, so we're really interested in your insight. But I guess, first of all, can you just sort of tell us what it was like pre-COVID and the impact that it had on both of your restaurants when the government handed down the mandate to close restaurants and only do takeaway?
Yeah, sure. So pre-COVID, it's quite tragic really because we had one of the strongest summers we've personally ever had. Stillwater's entering into its 20th year, and we had the best summer ever on record. So it was quite, we were really positive about the future, and we just opened our rooms just over a year ago, seven rooms on site, and we were humming along quite well. Then when the Tasmanian government closed the borders as such, we knew then things were getting serious, and we had seen a drop-off anyway leading up to that of tourists, particularly obviously international, but interstate was starting to drop off. And then, when the borders closed, that really put things into perspective for us and made us realise that this is going to be very different to what we had expected to be for the next few months. And then we, that week that felt like it was a year for everyone in hospitality particularly, was just, it was a blur and so much work. We just tried to adapt as quickly as we could to the changing settings each day. And when we got handed down from the federal government that it was takeaway only was, I guess just devastating. But it was almost, as some of people have commented on this podcast, it was easier for that to be handed down because it made it clearer for us what the landscape was going to be for the future.
So you have the two restaurants and they're quite different, and there's accommodation at one of them as well. How many people are you employing, and what was the impact on the staff?
So we define them as being three businesses, the rooms and the two restaurants. So between the three, we had just over 60 staff before this happened. We stood down, I think it was about 50. And then obviously with JobKeeper coming in was a huge game changer. And we were able to bring back, I think it ended up being 41 across the three businesses that were eligible, which we were, stoked with. But obviously that was a huge impost on us to fund that until the money came through. So, personally, that was really challenging and confronting. We personally had to, sell a car. James and I work with my husband. He's the sommelier. And that was, it's all relative. You kind of feel guilty that there are people that are so much worse off. But it's, I guess those in hospitality know how much you sacrifice to be in this industry and to own your own business. So yeah, and then we've kept on. We had a handful of internationals. We've managed to keep two on sort of minimal hours. And unfortunately, I had to let the rest go. But we managed to find quite a lot of picking work for our team because we're right in, the heart of the Tamar Valley, essentially. So quite a lot of the front of house were able to get jobs picking. So that kind of tied them over for a month or so. And yeah, that was the community support, people reaching out and saying, I've got a couple of spots for pickers, was just, really heartwarming and made us feel very good.
So you've managed to bring back 41 staff on board, but the businesses aren't open, obviously, and running as normal restaurants. How do you decide sort of what roles are played and what people can do to in that employment model?
Yeah, it was quite tricky, although some circumstances, we've got a lot of uni students, quite a few single parents and young parents. So it was just trying to work within the parameters of each individual's availability and their situation. There were quite a few that we didn't have working to begin with. We were just keeping with sort of the more senior staff. And like a lot of the uni students, we just kind of left them to focus on their studies, I guess you can say, and then slowly brought people back in. So the kitchen's, I guess, a different beast because most of those were full-time anyway. Whereas the front of house, we just kind of shared around the roles, doing deliveries, doing doing coffee shifts, facilitating the takeaway. But I guess for anyone that has opened back up and is doing takeaway and delivery, it really requires a lot of people to do it well and to cover as many grounds as you can in terms of covering deliveries. And so it's been quite surprising how many bodies we've needed, particularly on those busy nights on Fridays, Saturdays. We've been so grateful for the support and the interest in what we've been offering. We launched Stillwater's dinner back for Good Friday. I think we sent out 120 mains, which we were just blown away by. And so, a busy night for us, we're maybe doing 40, 50 main courses going out. And then at Black Cow, the response has just been phenomenal when we announced. So we announced we were going to do takeaway in the early, before we were forced to do takeaway there, because we've got such a tourist market there. We've got a really large Asian tourist market at Black Cow. They love their Tasmanian beef and, come with the, the little Japanese guides that we've been printed in over the years and point at what they want, they want what's in the picture. So with the international travel, obviously, slowing down, we just knew we needed to adapt quite quickly. I don't like the word pivot. We needed to adapt very quickly. So that was, we were really caught off guard, you could almost say. I think it was the first Friday night there, we did 140 main courses go out, and it's a tiny shoebox of a kitchen. I don't know if you remember, Huck. I remember when I looked after you at Black Cow many, many, many years ago. It's a tiny, tiny space. So for the team to do that down there was just absolutely incredible.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's waned a little bit now. Obviously, the novelty has worn off, I suppose, and the reality over the last 6 or 7 weeks for, I guess, each local's industry potentially being affected a little bit later than hospitality has slowed things down somewhat. But it's still been, the community support has been really amazing.
How important has that sense of community been in these circumstances? And, the restaurants have relied on that tourism trade, but the community jumping on board, and what's the feeling there in Launceston at the moment?
It's actually really positive. It's been quite optimistic. I think Launceston's been lucky in that we've had minimal cases in Launceston. And so I think people have moved around a little bit more freely and a little bit with with a little bit more confidence, perhaps, than particularly places like Melbourne and Sydney, and the northwest of Tasmania. I'm sure that most people have seen the news reports of the outbreak there, as it's being used as a bit of an example of what could happen in a small regional area. So everyone's been, really, really supportive and really positive, and it was so heartwarming the first few weeks of a lot of our guests coming in and re-establishing these kind of new relationships with some regulars that we've had for years. But now we've got this, I guess, deeper relationship with them, because they've genuinely asked, how are you going? And to all the staff, not just to us as owners. We're very, I guess, visible as owners because we work quite a lot on the restaurant floor. But they've been really, really interested to know how things are going and if we're doing okay. And those first couple of weeks, I remember there was, must have been the Sunday after being told we can only do takeaway. And I get shaky talking about it now, just the number of friends and, regular customers, even not that regular a customer coming in and, buying a bottle of wine or, something that's we've randomly put out on offer. I bagged up some of the teas to sell because we were sitting on so much tea that we used to serve at the restaurant. I'm like, well, we're not going to use that anymore. So, I've been bagging that up to sell, bags of beautiful tea craft to sell retail, and I'd get choked up every person that came in that I recognised. And they're like, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. And it's been incredible.
You and James work really hard on these restaurants, and trying to adapt to the current situation. How have you felt during this pandemic? Are you doing okay?
I like to think of myself as being a very resilient person. And there's definitely been, I work and work and work, and then I kind of bottle everything up, and then it all kind of explodes and gets to a head. Like on Mother's Day, I had one of my breakdowns of tears and existential crisis sort of moments. I've been, I think, just fatigued. Everyone's been talking about crisis fatigue, which is, definitely real in that first month, where we were all bombarded with so much information and, the doom and gloom. What I guess I'm personally feeling now is like a little bit of leadership fatigue, I guess you can say. I'm really driven I want to be a leader in our industry. I want to be the leader for our teams. I sit on 3 community boards that are, organisations that are for purpose, you'd call them that instead of not-for-profit these days, for purpose. And those 3 organisations are all affected by the crisis. One's a tourism organisation, one's an arts organisation, one's a local chamber of commerce. And to be innovative and to be coming up with ideas for your own 4 walls and your own family, and, to be the beacon of positivity for your team, I think has taken its toll at times. But I feel very well supported. Things like this podcast, Huck, have been, like a little beacon of hope, and just to hear other people's experiences really comforts me, and it makes you feel that you're part of it together. I think we can feel quite isolated in the industry down in little old Tassie, and feel like our Melbourne and Sydney counterparts and Adelaide and Brisbane are all so far away from what we do. We feel like, you can sometimes feel like you're experiencing challenges that no one else is feeling. And then when you hear, this great podcast, you just feel, so comforted by everyone else's stories.
Well, that sense of isolation that you're sort of speaking of in Tasmania, with sort of the travel ban at the moment, and the aviation sector having its own difficulties at the moment, and question marks over Virgin. What sort of impact is that going to have on you guys and the Launceston restaurant scene?
Yeah, It is going to be a big impact. I guess we've been in survival mode until, I guess we are still in survival mode. I guess we haven't turned our heads to think about it too much. I guess we're just trying to focus on what's at hand. But when we go to lifting restrictions of trying to then fill the restaurant, with, the 10-person rule, that's relatively straightforward to fill those 10 seats. But once we go back to having a relatively open restaurant, it is going to be a massive challenge. We really do rely, particularly our venues, on the interstate and international tourism. And it's really nerve-wracking. Launceston, to begin with, only had one flight coming in a week. Even when aviation started up, I think there was maybe 3 or 4 flights coming into Launceston a week. So only having one was like, oh, wow, that's scary. And who knows what will happen when the travel ban is lifted. I know that in Hobart there's, I think, 4 or 5 flights going in and out a week. It is a serious concern, but I guess, we're really relying on the local trade right now, and I guess we're in a good position right now in that people are clawing their own walls. They're ready to get out and they're ready to, indulge in something that they haven't been able to spend their money on. And so we've been picking up, a few bookings here and there for rooms, obviously of locals, just wanting to go out, get out of their own home. It's going to be very interesting to see the Tasmanian landscape without that international travel.
Well, let's, as you were sort of saying, sort of what's happening right now. Let's look at what's happening right now in your restaurant. So you've chosen to keep one as just takeaway, which is Black Cow Bistro, and to open the doors of Stillwater with the 10-person rule. Can you tell us what that's like and how you're playing that out?
So Stillwater, we've decided to just offer walk-in breakfast or brunch 8 to 1, 7 days a week for the 10, and just opening one dining space for the moment. We're very lucky, our location where we are, right on the water, and we're like right in the middle of a very popular walking track, a boardwalk. So on the weekends, on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, we do get we've got a huge coffee trade. We used to have very busy breakfasts back in the day. And so, we're just going to trial inside dining to begin, because we do have outside dining, and we've got a couple of private dining rooms and a wine bar area. And Tasmania, we can have 2 dining areas as long as the guests don't cross over. You've got your individual waiters for those areas. Obviously all your contact tracing, you're taking names and numbers, etc. So we're just going to try one space for now, and then maybe expand to the inside and outside next week. We're just a bit nervous about crowd control on the weekends. We're doing 250 coffees on a Sunday,
wow,
which is amazing. But if a quarter of those guests want to dine in, then we're just like, gosh, we don't know how we're going to manage that crowd control and taking names and numbers and, getting them to come back in an hour. Like it's obviously a lot of work, and a model we've never gone with before. We've always taken bookings and, had the space. We're a 65-seater inside and we could seat about 40 outside. So we've never had a problem with finding a table for a guest. So, it's just a whole new territory and a whole new business model, essentially, that we're going to be launching into this week. We've had a few dine in this morning, which has been lovely. It almost looks like someone's doing something naughty by sitting in the restaurant. It was quite odd to see. A couple of people, our first customers celebrated with us, and they ordered a glass of sparkling wine at 8 a.m, which was lovely, to feel some sort of normality back there. And then at dinner, we're going to do 2 sittings. We don't want to rush our guests by only doing, an hour and a half sitting. We're going to do 2 2-hour sittings and just see how that goes. And we've got our cellar, which seats back in the day 18, but the 1 in 4 square metre means we can only seat 6 in that space. And we're just going to trial that for small groups. We're also going to continue doing takeaway meals, but just no delivery, because those that were doing delivery are now needed back on the restaurant floor and the kitchen. So we had a couple of apprentice chefs doing some deliveries, and they'll be needed back in the kitchen, which is great to get them back into the space that they should be.
How did it make you feel having people eating in the restaurant for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, I went back up to my office space because I've just been sitting on my laptop in a very large empty room. So I walked up to the office and felt, it felt normal. It was really odd. It felt almost like the last 6 or 7 weeks was a dream and I still, I think even those first few weeks, probably the first month, I still felt like this was not happening. This was not real. It almost feels like it was a dream.
So why did you choose to do that with Stillwater and not Black Cow Bistro? And do you have plans to open that soon? Or?
Yeah, with stage 2 in Tasmania, we can open back up to 20 people in stage 2. So that's planned to be the middle of June. So Black Cow is a very different space. It's only a 40-seater, but that's across a cellar room of 12, so 30 odd on the restaurant floor, and a tiny, tiny kitchen. Stillwater's kind of like a long gantry style kitchen. So we've got the physical space to pack orders and plate up meals. And doing takeaway, it just requires so much physical space to lay out your bags and all those little things that you don't realize you need until you're actually doing it. And so Black Cow, it's just too small. And because of to be honest, the popularity of the takeaway offering down there, we think we'd be compromising our dining in guests and our takeaway guests if we try to do both. It's incredible the opportunity that we've been presented there. Is we think that that's potentially a new business model that we have at Black Cow, because this response has been so strong that, if we're in the position to do so in the future, we'd love to look for maybe a kitchen where we just do a takeaway business out of. Black Cow just needs to remain as is. And then when we go to the 20 people rule, it'll be a much more viable option that we'll probably wind down takeaway to some degree and just do back to dining in. But, in saying that, all this, whilst I say it's successful, we're still only taking a quarter of what we used to in a week. I think some people can misattribute the amount of bodies that are around and the amount of orders. We're doing a main and dessert at Black Cow for $45. We're doing 3 courses at Stillwater for $54. We used to do mains at $39, $40 at Stillwater. So it is still difficult to make ends meet. I had a customer kind of say to me one busy Sunday, and we had quite a lot of people standing out in the courtyard, and almost to the point where I wanted to move some people on because I felt like we were going to get shut down because there was too many people standing around in the sun, enjoying a takeaway coffee. And she said, "Oh, gee, you must be raking it in." I said, "Well, no, because, our guests are now spending on average, $5.50 versus, at breakfast, maybe $30, $35. So no, we're not raking it in. Whilst JobKeeper is an amazing scheme, it is, it's helping us keep our head above water.
Do you think that you'll do things or see things differently because of this in the restaurant sector?
I'd like to think so. I think the innovation that comes from this in terms of the way our teams are constructed, the way the shifts work, our menu, really looking at what we really want to do with the menu. I think we'd ended up with such a large offering at Stillwater. we ended up with, a huge a la carte menu. It was massive. We probably had 35 dishes, maybe even more on the a la carte menu. And then we did a tasting menu at night as well, a 5-course tasting menu, and they were different dishes to what was on the a la carte menu. Our breakfast offering was quite large. Our lunch menu, only a few dishes crossed over with the dinner menu. So I think it'll be really nice to scale back and really just refocus our energy on what on what Craig, our executive chef, wants to serve and what the team want to cook. And at Black Cow, I think we'd become not a tourist trap, but just a tourist beast, I suppose you can say, because the Asian market the demand was so strong there that we ended up being quite a high turnover restaurant. Most of the Asian market would come in and eat a main course and, spend the money on a expensive Wagyu steak and then be gone within an hour. So it became quite a busy little bistro. We're really looking forward actually to taking it back to what we intended it to be, as to be a more, upper class, higher end style steakhouse where our guests can sit and relax and really feel, really get an experience with a little less chaos around them, I guess. I'd like to think that the industry as a whole will be able to recenter itself. And, I know that the mental health card has been, we've been trying to focus on that more so in the last decade in hospitality. But I'd like to think that with us all slowing down and I guess finding balance in what we do, I hope, it's been lovely for us personally to have a little bit more home time and more time with our son. I hope that is another thing that comes out of this time, is that we can remember that our teams have families, our teams have other interests, and that those long weeks are just gone for good. I hope that no restaurant returns back to that. It's detrimental to everyone and everyone around them. And I know that there's so many great leaders out there, like, the Attica team and I remember talking to the IDES crew a long time ago about the way they construct their weeks. I hope that a lot of operators out there can really use this time to reevaluate the way a working week looks in industry. And I think it's been said before on this podcast, the spotlight back on service, or I guess, the spotlight's never really been on service in Australia. And being front of house, I've always been, I guess, somewhat frustrated that, and I mean, there are so many amazing chefs, and yes, chefs need to be celebrated, and their skill and their ability and their drive and their, their creativity needs to be celebrated. But there's so much to the front of house that your average person who's not in industry doesn't realise what it takes to run a successful restaurant floor or to be a memorable waiter in a good way. I'd like to think that, I loved what you said in your last podcast about that you're not really missing the food. What you're missing is the service interaction. And I really hope that when everyone starts to dine back out again, that they can appreciate the waiter's role a little bit more in their conduit of a really great experience.
Well, you've delivered those for people and you've won awards for it. And what are you missing from restaurants at the moment?
Oh, sorry to quote your podcast again, but the Vicky Wild podcast really got me choked up. I'm really missing that interaction. I'm really missing, I guess, the challenge. I love getting a challenging customer in the restaurant. I love getting someone who's, a bit frosty, doesn't really want to be there, underestimates your abilities. And then you can turn around and have them, wrapped around your little finger by the end of the night, or just they could become your friend by the end of the night. I love being able to change someone's mood. I love to be able to have that, have the opportunity to maybe make someone's day that little bit better. I'm really missing the banter between the team. I miss just, having a good old laugh and, just interacting with the wait staff and the kitchen. I've had some of the best times working on the restaurant floor. I'm missing the discovery of people finding something that they've not had before, or a flavour combination, and just their eyes light up. Like, it really is such an amazing experience to see someone go, oh my God, you changed my life with that dish, or I've never had a wine like that before, or and knowing what someone wants before they even know they want it. I love that skill of a great waiter. You can really connect with someone when you deliver something to the table, either as a complimentary, something if it's a special occasion, or you suggest something to them that they've not thought of. I've always loved that opportunity, and just to be part of the special occasions. Both of our restaurants are seen as special occasion restaurants. I mean, we don't intend them to be that way. We hope people would like to dine with us more than, their birthday every year. But it's so special to be a part of births, deaths, marriages, anniversaries, graduations, just celebrating life. That people, I often say, you can sort of sense a bit of a celebratory vibe on a table. And if I've ever inquired and they're like, oh no, we're just out to, just to dine. It's like, I like almost high five them to say, good on you. It doesn't, dining out doesn't need to be a special occasion. And just the fun of getting to know people. Some of my best friends now are people that I've gotten to know through the restaurant. I'm missing a lot.
And that's the beauty of them as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yep. I'm really missing it. I'm really looking forward to this week.
So moving forward, you've opened up Stillwater, and you're going to test the waters with the 10 people. And as we move forward through the stages, what are the positives to take out of this, and what's your hope for the industry in Tasmania and in Australia?
I think in Tasmania, the focus on supporting your local venue has been quite a discovery for some people. I think a lot of locals have either rediscovered or discovered for the first time the venues that are on their doorstep. And I think that's going to be great for the future. And to understand, I guess, the sense of community around that, because when they, for us here, we see them come down here and run into someone that they haven't seen for a while, or you hear it, they're like, oh, wow, I haven't seen you in ages. And that sense of community that a restaurant can bring, that it's not just about going there to eat and serve a purpose. It's about, connecting with people across all walks of life. And I think that's going to be a positive for everyone across the world. For Tasmania, the positives, I think, to recalibrate on what potentially our local market does want. I guess we had felt forced to satisfy the tourist market because they were the ones coming kind of in their droves. In summer, our restaurant on a any given night in the middle of summer would be 90% tourists and 10% local. And when you're a small town, you know who is local. It's rare that you kind of don't recognise someone from seeing them around or your general customers. So turning that around now to be 90% local, and when those borders lifted, it's going to be a minority tourist trade. To just find out, I guess, what your locals want. It's kind of a bit of a new marketing area that we need to understand what it is that they would like to see on their plate and in their glass. If they are wanting to drink local, if they are wanting, to try things further afield. Our focus will always be on local produce and championing that. That will never change. But possibly having the time to maybe discover some newer suppliers or some smaller suppliers now that we're kind of going to be doing smaller numbers, will be nice to have the time to connect with them. I guess for Australia, I don't know. I don't really think I've put in any thought into what this will mean for the greater. Yeah, I don't think I can answer that question.
Well, I think that your answer about Tasmania pretty much surmises the whole country, really. And I think everyone's going to be reaching for their local community again, and we're not going to be able to travel overseas, so we're going to be travelling around this beautiful country and hopefully giving a big boost to this hospitality sector that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to get back to the cities and dine, and to go out to regional areas across the country and experience our own backyard rather than getting on a plane and flying out of the country. Although I'm looking forward to that, of course. But
yeah, of course. Well, Bianca, so amazing to chat with you today. Good luck with the opening up of Stillwater and then stage 2 with Black Cow Bistro. And please keep in touch and let us know how it goes.
Thank you.
And we've loved having you on. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Huck.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.